Joining us this morning is the man who's very nearly the youngest party leader trying to win a seat at Holyrood.
I don't run anything past the Prime Minister. I lead the party here in Scotland. I'm the leader of the Scottish Conservatives. I make the decisions, the manifesto, the team.
Douglas Ross has been leader of the Scottish Conservatives for 9 months. He's the MP for Murray at Westminster and says he'll carry on doing that as well as being Tory leader at Holyrood. Famously, he's also one of Scotland's most high-profile football officials, running the line at top-flight matches. And on top of that, as if he's got a spare moment, he's the father of a 2-year-old son. Unlike the Prime Minister, he didn't go to Eton College. He's a graduate of Agricultural College. And last year, he quit a junior job in Boris Johnson's Westminster government in protest at Dominic Cummings breaking lockdown rules.
We've got a positive vision for Scotland. We want to see our education standards recover. They've tumbled down international rankings. We want to see a focus on supporting the NHS.
He's created waves in this election campaign by offering to work together with other parties on the issue which has dominated the first week of the campaign, and that is independence.
There is no doubt now the Nationalists will seek to game the system to ensure our Parliament and the focus in the next 5 years is all on independence rather than on our recovery.
So for the next hour, Douglas is here to take your questions. The number right now, 0333 20 20 401, 0333 20 20 401. If you're commenting on social media, use the hashtag SP21. And if you want to text us, you can. 61054 is the number. Start your message show. Alan, good morning. Have you eaten all the chocolate in the country yet?
Not yet. It's waiting for me once I come off here. It's just sitting there at my desk. So yeah, we'll be tucking into plenty of Easter eggs.
I was going to say, after the week you've had, you'll need the sugar rush. What's your assessment then of week one so far?
Well, week one is all about just getting out the blocks for the parties, isn't it? It's about getting on the road, getting on the campaign trail, getting comfortable in this campaign trail and getting those key messages across. You know, we've had 5 main parties in Scotland, essentially giving us 5 different versions of recovery. This is what this campaign has all been about so far, is how Scotland recovers from the COVID pandemic. So they're out the blocks, they're getting their key messages across. And as we go on from here, this is now into policy territory. This is when we find out what the promises are, what the big pledges are for the election. And this is why, you know, programmes like this are so exciting and so good to be part of. Because, you know, as a journalist going out day to day, we often ask them about what is on the issue of the day, and perhaps that's not the issue that you want to know. That's not perhaps what might win you over in this election. So these programmes are a great chance to put your questions directly to the leaders of those parties, getting across, well, what are the people's priorities? And hopefully, John, between you and I, hopefully we might be able to get them some answers.
We'll try. That number again, 0333 20 20 401. I make no apologies. I'm going to bang away at that as the hour wears on. Feel free to give us a buzz. Good morning, Douglas. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. It's Happy Easter to you both and all the listeners as well.
I'm looking forward to my chocolate as well.
Douglas, obviously this is, as John was saying, we're just over a week into this campaign now. This is your first campaign as the leader of the Scottish Conservatives. For you, how have you found this first week? How do you think it's going?
Well, it's gone very quick. I've been in the North East, I've been in Edinburgh, I've been in Glasgow, I was out in Murray yesterday with our local candidate there, so I've been all over the country. We've been delivering our message on focus on the recovery, on education, on the health service, on protecting people's jobs, and it's been good to get out and about a bit more because we've all been stuck in the house for a long time, and I know a lot of listeners still are, but it has been good to deliver some leaflets and see people socially distanced, and I'm just pleased that we're up and running and we're out the blocks.
As you say, it's been a quick week, but how do you think you're performing? Because when you look at some of the polls that have come out over this weekend, we're seeing another one from the Sunday Times this morning that shows perhaps support for unionist parties, support for the Scottish Conservatives is slipping. How much do you read into those?
Well, I always have a look at the polls, but I think the most important thing I've taken from the poll, particularly this morning, is that the smaller parties don't have enough support to win any significant number of MSPs, but they do have enough support to allow nationalists into Parliament, and that's my biggest concern, is if people don't support the tried and tested method to stop the nationalists, which 5 years ago with the Scottish Conservatives, then they are actually aiding the SNP or Alex Salmond's nationalists to have our Parliament once again dominated by another independence referendum.
I mean, that has been the message from you from the get-go, even before the start of this campaign. It's about stopping another independence referendum for you. It's about stopping an SNP majority. But that message, if you look at the polls, not just today's poll, but recent polls, that message doesn't seem to be winning you much support.
Well, I think people understand that's the threat we've got, and I want to see a Scottish Parliament focused on our recovery and rebuilding Scotland after the last 12 months. Other parties want the same, but I can see the threat to all that is another independence referendum. So we've got to call it out. We've got to say to Nicola Sturgeon or to Alex Salmond, that would be a reckless move to have another referendum when we should be focused on our economy, on protecting jobs, on supporting businesses, on restoring our educational standards, on protecting the NHS. These are all the things I want to speak about and have dominate our proceedings in Holyrood over the next 5 years. But we can't do that when you've still got the threat of another independence referendum.
And if you want to ask Douglas Ross about those things or anything else, the number is 0333 2020 401. The number called by Liz Lowry. Good morning, Liz. What's your point?
Good morning. My point is, and it's actually very relevant as to what Douglas has just said, he is standing and Conservatives are standing on a ticket of stop IndyRef 2. My point is that if there is a majority of pro-Indy MSPs returned, what right do the Scottish Tories have to stop a second referendum being held once COVID is over and it's safe to do so if that's what the people of Scotland vote for?
Douglas?
Thanks, Liz. It's a point a number of people put across. First of all, we don't know when COVID will be over. We're still in the middle of this health pandemic. The UK vaccination programme has undoubtedly helped us see a way out of this crisis and hopefully put the last 12 months behind us. But there have been numerous studies, including the IFS study, which says Scotland's economy might not get back to pre-pandemic levels for another 3 or 4 years. So we will still be dealing with the after effects of COVID-19 on our economy for years to come. And that's why I think we've got to prioritise our recovery and rebuilding Scotland over another referendum.
But Liz's question is, what right would you have to stop another independence referendum if a majority of Scots vote for parties that back another independence referendum?
Well, I think people supporting the SNP or nationalist parties have to realise that is the proposal they would be putting forward. They would rather have a referendum than a recovery. And when we look at the number of jobs that people may lose over the next few years, the number of businesses that may not survive, the fact that our NHS has been through so much over the last 12 months and operations have been delayed, consultations have been put back, there's an awful lot of things we should be laser focused on, not another referendum. So that's why I would say no to another referendum. We don't need that distraction. We don't need that division in our communities all over again when we've got a real big task to rebuild our country after the last 12 months dealing with COVID-19.
But the question is, what do you do to stop the referendum if a majority of Scots vote for one? Because we've heard Michael Russell, for example, the Constitution Secretary, say if people in Scotland vote for a referendum, there will be a referendum, and it would be down to Boris Johnson and his government to challenge that in the courts. Do you think Boris Johnson is prepared to take to the courts if the Scottish Government, if the Scottish Parliament votes ahead with a referendum?
Well, I don't think this should end up in the courts. Of course, the SNP previously said they would respect the result of the 2014 referendum. They said that was the gold standard of referendums that we could have in Scotland. Now they are suggesting there are alternative routes, such as a wildcat illegal referendum. And again, that just takes all our focus away from rebuilding and our recovery. And that's why I want to see the focus on protecting your jobs, protecting our NHS, investing more in the NHS over the next Parliament, recruiting more teachers to make sure our educational standards start to climb back up the international rankings rather than fall down them as we've seen in recent years. So that's where I think a lot of people, no matter their view on the Constitution, they do see this election as one where we've got an opportunity to recover after this pandemic. But we can't do that when all the focus is on another referendum.
I mean, you must have had those conversations with Boris Johnson about what happens in this election if there is that majority for independent supporting parties. I mean, what is his thinking? What has he told you about what he might do if that call comes?
Well, first of all, we want to stop that call coming. We want to stop another SNP majority, just as the Scottish Conservatives did in 2016. We more than doubled the number of MSPs. We saw the SNP go into that election with a majority and come out of it without a majority. So there is a tried and tested method for people to use to stop an SNP majority, to stop another referendum, and that's to vote Scottish Conservative. In terms of the discussions I've had with the Prime Minister, he is a proud unionist. He wants to see Scotland remain part of a strong United Kingdom, referendum, and Scotland benefits from that, and the UK benefits from that, and he is right behind our fight here in Scotland to stop the SNP getting that majority.
When did you last speak to Boris about it?
Oh, a couple of weeks ago, probably. We keep in touch over the campaign.
Liz, do you feel your question's been answered?
Absolutely not. And could I just make a further point? There is absolutely nobody in the SNP suggesting a wildcat referendum.
Well, Liz,
these are the kind of slogans that are getting thrown about by the Scottish Conservatives. Nobody is suggesting there's a referendum now. Nobody is suggesting that there's a wildcat referendum. But my question still has not been answered as to when COVID is finished. Why would they stop a second independence referendum if that's what people in Scotland want?
Well, that was the point I was trying to make, Liz. We don't know when COVID will be over. We're still trying to get through the health pandemic. We know, it's not just me or the Scottish Conservatives saying this, but it will take years for our economy to get back up to pre-pandemic levels. And I want to see the Scottish economy do even better than it was this time a year ago or before we went into the pandemic. And in terms of the SNP not calling for an illegal wildcat referendum, the Scottish National Party have set out an 11-point plan as to how they would have another independence referendum. Part of that is seeking a Section 30 order from the UK government again, but also they have suggested other means, and that would be, without a Section 30 order, an illegal wildcat referendum.
Thank you very much for that one, Douglas. The number 0333 20 2401. Peter, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Your question, please.
Hi, Douglas. I've been a Tory supporter for all my days, and I'm quite heavily involved in the fishing industry, and I'm struggling to give you my vote this time over the debacle the Tory government caused over the fishing. How can you convince me to give your vote this time? What are you going to do about it? We're really struggling. SNP is probably going to get my vote over what the Tory government did. How can you convince me?
Well, Peter, first of all, thanks for your support in the past, and I understand how difficult this has been for the fishing industry. That's why I've not tried to minimise the problems you and others are facing. That's why I said we had to get a compensation scheme up and running. It didn't go far enough to begin with, so I was calling for it for the catching sector, and that's right that that's now available for the catching sector. But we can't just continue to compensate for losses. We've got to get to the root of the problems, and the root of the problems are added bureaucracy and red tape that wasn't there before Brexit, that was there from the 1st of January. Some of that has started to be streamlined, but not anywhere near enough. So I want to continue working with the industry. That's why at the start of the campaign I held another round table with the fishing industry. We've got to look at international swaps. We've got to look at making it easier for groupage, which is when a number of smaller suppliers are in the same consignment. And we've got to make sure that all the problems there is with red tape and bureaucracy are minimised and reduced as much as possible. Peter, you're saying the alternative for you is to vote for the SNP, and you will have to look at all the other parties, but of course the SNP's proposal is to take us back into the EU, which I think is what fishermen have voted to come out of, and they may be disappointed with the current scenario, but over the next 5 years we will gain complete control over what we can fish, where and when, and who can fish in our waters. With the SNP they'd hand that straight back to the EU.
Peter?
Okay, Douglas, well, that's incorrect, because in 5 years' time from now, when we're supposed to take back full control, that Europe has us over a barrel with the energy, and that is a direct debate. They can turn off the energy till the UK. So we are over a barrel with Europe over the fishing. So that is incorrect what you're saying, and that needs resolved.
Well, I don't think it is incorrect what I'm saying, Peter. We are clear that we continue to get more and more share of our quota over the next 5 years. The biggest uplift is this year, and then by 5.5 years from the agreement being signed on Christmas Eve last year, we will have full control over who fishes what, where and when. I would have loved that to have happened far quicker. I think a lot of the fishing industry hoped that would be the case, but that is our direction of travel, and that's where we can be in just a few years' time. With the SNP, they'd take you straight back into the EU, and then you would have no control at all. It's what fishermen in my Murray constituency and across Scotland have been campaigning to come out of for the last 40 years. And if you give your vote to the SNP, you're effectively telling them it's fine, take us back into the EU and all the regulation and red tape from within the EU.
John Collins and Alan Smith joined by Douglas Ross, leader of the Scottish Conservatives, taking your calls on 0333 2020 401. Stevie texted 61054, started his message show and said, Douglas, how would you make Scotland better? He reckons it's all negative campaigning.
Well, I've set out a number of plans. For example, 3,000 additional teachers. I think that would make a big difference to our educational standards here in Scotland. We were told we would see a reduction in class sizes. Actually, all we've seen is a reduction in the number of teachers, and that has a knock-on effect to the number of subjects young people can choose at school. I want to see £2 billion additional support for the NHS over the next 5 years. I want to see full fibre broadband by 2027. I want to see more local police. I want to see a skills revolution with our £500 skills grants to encourage people to take up training to help them stay in work or get back into work. So these are all positive policies that the Scottish Conservatives are taking forward at this election. You
do think that's perhaps been an issue at the start of this campaign? I know certainly when I spoke to you on Wednesday regarding your policing plans, and tweeting out that video, one of the first responses was, finally, Douglas is talking about some policy. He's talking about something other than the independence referendum. Is that perhaps where the campaign might have not gotten off to the best start because you've not been talking about ideas enough?
Well, I've been talking about ideas and policies since August, but this isn't a criticism of you, Alan, or journalists in general. However, a lot of the questions I get are, what do you think about what the nationalists are saying here? Are the SNP doing this correct? What do you think about independence? So I want to focus on the policies that we're putting forward. I think they're really ambitious and positive policies for Scotland. But also, we have a major threat hanging over us with another independence referendum. We can't ignore that. We can't sit in the corner of the room and just ignore the big elephant opposite us. We've got to focus on that threat to then allow us to have a recovery, to rebuild Scotland and invest in all the areas that I think have been neglected over the last few years.
On the morning of Easter Bunnies, we're now talking about elephants in rooms. If you want to speak to Douglas Ross, put your question to him, give us a call right now. I've got two lines free for you, 0333 2020 401, or drop us a text. 61054. We're talking with Douglas next in moments.
The Scottish Parliament election 2021. The leaders phone in. Clyde.
At Tesco Mobile, we know every little helps. So get the amazing iPhone 12 with cinematic 4K Dolby Vision video, so you can capture all of your favourite moments for just $32.49 a month. And that's our lowest ever price. You'll also enjoy double data. That's a brilliant 12 gigs, as well as Club Card Plus for 6 months on us. So switch to Tesco Mobile and get your hands on this fantastic deal. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 18th of April. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile. Club Card Plus. Eligibility and conditions apply. Subscription renews at $7.99 a month unless cancelled. Double data activation required. Sky.com.
When you use Boomin, the brand new property site, good things happen.
What, like increasing my chances of getting a house on my dream street with a kind of matchmaking service?
Boom.
Or booking a house viewing anytime, 24/7.
Boom.
Or finding that buyer that's not put off by my address. Number 666.
We'll get back to you on that one. Buying, renting. Get Boomin at boomin.com.
Confirmation required for viewings.
Not giving in.
We're moving in the right direction, but we know new coronavirus outbreaks can still happen. To stop the spread of new infectious strains, we all need to keep playing our part, even if you've had the vaccine, so we can keep moving forward and get back together again. We've come too far. We're not giving in. For more information, go to gov.scot/coronavirus.
If you like low prices on fresh fruit and veg this Easter, you might like Aldi's Super 6. Cherry tomatoes, 49p. White potatoes, 45p. Cucumber and swede, 29p. Parsnips and carrots, now just 19p. And as an extra bonus to this week's Super 6, romaine lettuce, just 79p. Aldi.
At Gala Bingo, we all know Scotland is an awesome place. Maybe that's because it has 3 official languages. 13% of the population are redheads. 89 Olympic medalists. And 1 unicorn. In 2020, you also won over £12 million in prizes. So, come along and join the fun at galabingo.com. 18 plus, please play responsibly.
Thanks to their new online training program, Luther's Gym now has clients all over the world. Maybe too many.
With 3 new conditioning coaches, we could stream sessions in every time zone.
It's time to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Indeed delivers quality candidates so you can focus on hiring the person you need to help your business grow. That's why more than 250,000 businesses in the UK use Indeed. Visit Indeed.com/try today and start finding your next great employee. That's Indeed.com/try today.
This is Clyde 2.
Get the latest travel update for Glasgow and the West
at Clyde2.com.
Has Curry's BC World got epic deals on this Easter? Do bunnies like to bounce? Hunt down fantastic Easter surprises, like saving £100 on the HP Chromebook 14A, now only $229. It has a full HD screen with next to no frame around it, and Bang & Olufsen sound. Plus, there's a whole host of apps available on the Google Play Store, like Netflix, YouTube, Prime Video, and Microsoft Word. You'd be hopping mad to miss it. And our other epic Easter treats at Curry's PC World.
At Tesco Mobile, we know every little helps. So get the amazing iPhone 12 with cinematic 4K Dolby Vision video, so you can capture all of your favourite moments for just $32.49 a month. And that's our lowest ever price. You'll also enjoy double data. That's a brilliant 12 gigs, as well as Clubcard Plus for 6 months on us. So switch to Tesco Mobile and get your hands on this fantastic deal. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 18th of April. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile. Clubcard Plus. Eligibility and conditions apply. Subscription renews at $7.99 a month unless cancelled. Double data activation required.
The Leaders Phone In. Call now on 0333 2020 401.
Clyde 2.
And that's the number. You can also text us 61054. Start your message show. Douglas Ross joins us this morning. He's avoiding the chocolate, but not avoiding your questions. Some coming through on text. Political correspondent Alan nearly forgot your job title wrong there.
My goodness.
What's come in this time?
We've got a question, Douglas, from David Summer, who asks, he says, to give all to Scottish voters, should all MSPs only be an MSP, or is the Scottish Parliament only worth part-time politicians? Obviously, that's a question in regards to you being an MP and hoping to be an MSP and do both jobs at the same time.
Well, obviously we know, David, that there are a number of people standing for election who are currently MPs and are hoping to be MSPs. And the fact is, since devolution, 3 of our 5 First Ministers have served as both MSP, MP and been First Minister. So it's happened before, but my focus is 100% on representing the constituents who elect me and standing up to be a strong, passionate voice in Holyrood.
So you think you can divide your time between Holyrood and Westminster? If you are back in Holyrood, would you be leading First Minister's questions on a daily basis, on a weekly basis?
Yes, absolutely.
And
sorry, Alan, I should say, I better just put in a caveat. My wife is now 6 months pregnant, so there will be a couple of weeks for paternity leave that I will have to give it to someone else. So I don't want fact check or someone to say I misled your listeners. There'll be a couple of weeks when I'm caring for our new son or daughter that I won't be there, but the rest of the time it'll be me leading at First Minister's questions.
And of course, at the weekends you've got another job as well, running the lines at football games. I mean, how do you balance all of this? MP, MSP, another child on the way, and running the lines at the weekends?
Well, I don't balance it at the moment because I've been out injured since the beginning of January, so a nasty hamstring injury has curtailed my refereeing, but I'd already scaled it down significantly. And I think all leaders have something that they focus on out with politics. For me, it's football. It's a sport the vast majority of people in Scotland love to watch. They probably love to criticise my decisions as well, but it does give me a release from politics at the weekend.
Derek in Glasgow has just messaged in saying, why, getting back to this dichotomy of having 2 roles, why are you leader of the Scottish Conservatives when you're not even an MSP and you're based down in Westminster?
Well, Derek, because I'm standing to be an MSP in this election, and I will lead the team, as I've been doing for the last number of months since I was returned as leader of the Scottish Conservatives in August. Obviously, it was great to have Ruth back in the front line in Scottish politics, and she held the fort for that period. And after the election, hopefully, I'm returned as an MSP for the Highlands and Islands, and I can then lead the team in Holyrood as well.
Just a question in regards to Ruth Davidson, being by your side during this campaign. We saw a story yesterday in the Daily Record talking about how Ruth Davidson's fronting the campaign materials in at least a couple of the constituencies, and referred to you as essentially being subbed because you've been put back onto page 2 or 3. Why is Ruth Davidson on the front of some of these leaflets and not you?
Well, I'm very proud of what Ruth has done and continues to do for our party. We work very closely together, and unlike some other political leaders, I've got no problem with working alongside former leaders of the Scottish Conservatives.
So this isn't anything to do with popularity. This isn't the party thinking perhaps Ruth Davidson's more popular than you and will win more votes for the party than having you in the front of the leaflets.
No, this is just showing that the Scottish Conservatives have a strong team. And as you say, I've been doing all the press summaries and the press interviews. I'm the one that's doing this talk show today, the call-in show, and I'm the one that's leading the team here in Scotland. We heard the clip earlier on that, it's my supporters, my campaign, my message, and my manifesto, which I think is a really positive, ambitious manifesto for Scotland that we're taking forward.
If you want to ask a question of Douglas, 0333 2020 401, that's the number that Robert called. Happy Easter, Robert.
Hi there, thank you. Happy Easter to you too.
And your question for Douglas?
Yeah, Mr. Ross, I'm just wondering why you think Scotland is so much better off in this corrupt union. When you think about it, Scotland makes so much more money and doesn't receive a portion of that back from Westminster. I'm wondering how you can think that 37 billion spent on a track and trace is acceptable, given that there's only 2 projects in human history that have actually cost more.
So, Robert, first of all, your original point is just wrong. Absolutely incorrect. But in terms of what does Scotland get from this union, it gets a vaccine programme. The rollout here in Scotland has been a massive success thanks to our NHS staff, the British Armed Forces and volunteers up and down the country. The fact that now 2.5 million people in Scotland have had the first dose of their vaccine is because we've been part of the United Kingdom that has seen the UK lead the way in terms of Europe for the vaccine rollout, and indeed is one of the top countries around the world. That's just one of the benefits people in Scotland get from being part of a strong United Kingdom.
Does Robert not have a point, though, when he comes to talking about track and trace and the money that's been spent on projects like that?
Look, there have been issues in all governments in terms of how they have handled this pandemic, and lessons will be learned, undoubtedly. I think that's right. We were speaking yesterday about inquiries in terms of what's gone right and what's gone wrong. But we also have to look at what has gone right, what has helped people, what has saved lives, and that is the vaccine rollout, protecting the most vulnerable in society, allowing us to start to release some of the restrictions that we've been living under for most of the last year. And that's the positive I want to focus on. That's what we can do as part of the United Kingdom. And I think that's a very strong message for staying part of the UK.
Robert, have you changed your opinion?
Not at all. He's completely ignored my question. The Scottish NHS has managed the vaccine rollout. The Scottish NHS is completely separate from the English NHS. And you've not answered anything about the 37 billion wasted on the track and trace. You've decided not to focus on the negative of that and focus on the positive that... Yeah, I mean, there is a positive in the 2.5 million people that have been vaccinated, but 37 billion is a complete waste of money on something that has not worked.
I've said, Robert, there will be issues that all governments have gone through that were wrong, that hadn't been handled as well as they could have been, and that's why it's right to have an inquiry at the end of all this to make sure mistakes of the past aren't repeated going forward. But we can't ignore something as positive as the vaccine rollout, because it's our way out of this pandemic.
Robert, thank you very much for your call. The number 0333 2020 401, or you can text 61054. Start your message show. That will get straight into us in the studio. More of a comment really than a question. Kenny says Douglas uses the term threat of a referendum. I see it as democracy. Douglas?
Sorry, I wasn't sure if I was commenting on a comment.
You feel free.
I see it as a threat. I see it as a threat to our recovery. We can't focus on our recovery and rebuilding Scotland when we have another divisive, damaging referendum. I understand there are people on the other side who want to have a referendum. They'd want to keep holding a referendum on Scottish independence until they get the answer they want. I'd rather we focus all our resources and all the attention in the Scottish Parliament over the next 5 years on protecting people's jobs, on raising our educational standards, on supporting the NHS. That's where I think the focus really should and has to be over the next Parliament.
In terms of talking about the threat, and the campaign is obviously built around stopping another independence referendum. That in itself seems to be an acceptance that if there is a majority of independents supporting MSPs, that there could be another referendum, which is something that hasn't really been accepted on your side. Is the fact that there might be a referendum, there could be a referendum.
Well, I don't want another referendum. I'm a Scottish Conservative and Unionist, and I believe that when 55% of people voted to stay in the United Kingdom in 2014, we've got to respect their views. More than 2 million people voted to remain part of the United Kingdom, and I think we've seen during this pandemic the benefits of that. When I was speaking to Robert about the vaccination programme, that's a benefit of Scotland being in the United Kingdom. The £13.3 billion of additional support coming to Scotland to handle this pandemic is a benefit of being in the United Kingdom. And all the jobs that have been protected through the furlough scheme, through the self-employed income support, and the 90,000 businesses across Scotland that have benefited from that support have all benefited because Scotland is part of a strong United Kingdom.
But on that point of how Scotland perhaps would fare during a pandemic like this, if Scotland was independent, would Scotland not then have the same financial powers that Westminster has, for example, and borrow money like Westminster has been doing to help us get through a pandemic like this?
No, I think most people would accept, and indeed there was an article in the Financial Times yesterday just how stark the country's finances would be if we were an independent nation, and the challenges then are either higher taxes or cuts to vital services. And if we had been going through that during a pandemic, I would hate to think what that would mean in terms of our response. But ultimately, we've been able to do all of this because we are part of a strong family of 4 nations, and I think that is a benefit. We've got to look at how we have achieved the vaccine rollout, the support, the protecting people's jobs, because we are part of a strong United Kingdom.
Now, we have been getting a lot of questions coming in. One from Ryan Timms, who asks, will you support the introduction of drugs consumption rooms in Scotland as part of a wider plan to tackle the completely preventable drug deaths in Scotland? Where do you stand on these overdose prevention centres, safe consumption rooms as have been called?
So I don't support them. I want to see more investment into rehab facilities. It was encouraging to see the SNP agreeing to Scottish Conservative demands at the beginning of this year to reinvest in them after they had cut rehab facilities significantly. But I don't think the way to deal with this is to continue to have people taking drugs, despite it being a safer way in a consumption room. So I do want to see the focus on rehab, but I'm not a closed door. I will never be a shut book on issues like this. I'll continue to look at the evidence, continue to look at what people are saying about it, but my view is we should focus more on rehab than drug consumption rooms.
But the Scottish Affairs Committee at Westminster did a lot of work on this and did take a lot of that evidence and actually visited consumption rooms in other parts of the world and came to the conclusion that there should at least be a trial of consumption room within the United Kingdom, within Scotland. That work, that evidence is there. So why can't you back what they've got?
Because the evidence also suggests, why is Scotland the highest drug deaths country in the United Kingdom, across Europe and potentially even the world? We don't have drug consumption rooms anywhere else in the United Kingdom. So why is the problem so much worse here in Scotland? Why are so many families year after year being ripped apart because of drug deaths or drug-related deaths, when that's not as big a problem in other parts of the United Kingdom where there are also not formal legal drug consumption rooms?
You posed the question. Do you have an answer?
Well, I think we've got to look at this in the round, and there is no silver bullet. There's not one issue that is going to tackle this, but I do think reinvesting in rehab facilities, which we've seen closed down over the last few years because funding had been withdrawn, was a mistake, and that's why we campaigned so hard to get that funding reinserted into the budget to start getting these rehab facilities open again and helping people.
I mean, the Misuse of Drugs Act is now 50 years old. Would you look at changing the Misuse of Drugs Act at all, in your role at Westminster? I mean, where do you stand as is this crisis a public health emergency, or do you continue to pursue this as a criminal matter?
No, I think it is a public health emergency. We just have to see, as I say, the number of deaths here in Scotland as a result of drug-related overdoses, etc., is a shame. It's a national blight that we have to tackle. I believe the way of tackling that is to focus on rehab facilities. Others believe it's drug consumption rooms. But I think we can all agree there's no one silver bullet that will solve this problem. It has been a national shame in Scotland for so long. We've got to do as much as possible to address this and stop families going through the grief of losing a loved one far too soon. I think the way we can focus that is on drug rehab rooms and facilities. But as I say, I'll never be a closed book on this. I will continue to look at the evidence as it emerges in the months and years ahead.
Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross with our political correspondent Alan Smith. My name's John Collins. Anne texted, does Douglas plan on taking a half salary from the UK government and a half salary from the Scottish government, or just full from both if he's elected, Douglas?
So the process, if someone is both an MP and an MSP, is their MSP salary is a proportion of what other MSPs get. I think it's about £20,000, and I have said I would donate that money to charity, as previous people who have been both MSP and MSP have done. So I do not gain at all financially from being both an MP and an MSP. I just think it's actually quite good for someone to be in both of Scotland's parliaments. We have a government and a parliament in Edinburgh, a government and a parliament at a UK level, and I actually think it's good because most people just want the two governments working together to achieve the best for local people, local areas and local communities, and I think I can help to do that by representing Scotland in both of those parliaments.
A few more minutes left for you to get your questions in. 0333 20 20 401, or if you're a fraction shy, 61054 on your text. The word to start your text with is show. Back in a sec.
The Scottish Parliament election 2021. The leaders phone in.
Clyde 2.
Fundraise for Cash for Kids.
And sign up to Scotland's virtual kilt walk on the weekend of the 23rd of April.
Kilt walkers can complete any socially distanced challenge they like,
with proceeds matched up to 50% by the Hunter Foundation.
Cash for Kids will pay your entry fee too.
Just head to Clyde2.com.
Make the summer of 21 a summer you'll remember for years to come with PrizeJar.com. Our sensational summer bundle will give the lucky winner not just one, but 3 incredible prizes, with £3,000 tax-free cash, an all-inclusive family or luxury couples holiday to the Canaries, and a mega garden entertainment package. Win all of this for just £3. UK over 18s only. Free postal entry is available. Got 5 while your dinner's on. Got 5 while you're making a brew. Got 5 while you're waiting for your lucky socks to dry. 5 minutes is all it takes to register to vote in the May Scottish Parliament election. So if you've never registered or have recently moved house, visit gov.uk/register to vote by the 19th of April. Your vote matters. Don't lose it.
That's the sound of someone settling in with a cup of tea to relax with the Drama Channel on demand on UK TV Play. UK TV Play is a TV app where you can catch up and stream loads of great shows, including those from the Drama Channel. It's completely free on your TV, mobile or online. UK TV Play, the TV app where you can find the Drama Channel on demand. Go on, why not have a biscuit as well?
We interrupt your listening to advise that it's really rather a fine idea to start your day with a jolly good breakfast.
Or as we like to say, grab yourself a rare wee stutter of a breakfast. Scots proper porridge. Thick, hearty and 100% Scottish milled since 1880. Scots who know porridge know Scots.
At Tesco Mobile, we know every little helps. So get the amazing iPhone 12 with cinematic 4K Dolby Vision video, so you can capture all of your favourite moments for just $32.49 a month. And that's our lowest ever price. You'll also enjoy double data. That's a brilliant 12 gigs, as well as Club Card Plus for 6 months on us. So switch to Tesco Mobile and get your hands on this fantastic deal. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 18th of April. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile. Club Card Plus. Eligibility and conditions apply. Subscription renews at $7.99 a month unless cancelled. Double data activation required.
not giving.
As the restrictions ease, we all need to remember facts. Face coverings, avoid crowds, clean hands, 2-meter distance, self-isolate. These actions reduce the chance of spreading the virus without knowing it and stop new strains taking hold. Even if you've had the vaccine, keep following facts so we can keep moving forward and get back together again. We've come too far. We're not giving in. For more information, go to gov.scot/coronavirus.
Now streaming on Disney Plus, an all-new 6-part original series. After Avengers Endgame changed everything,
the world's upside down right now.
A new adventure begins.
Here we go again, huh?
Join Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Superheroes cannot be allowed to exist. Oh yeah?
In the exciting new chapter of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I have a plan.
See? That wasn't so hard.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier, a 6-part original series. Now streaming only on Disney Plus. 18+ subscription required. T's and C's apply.
Pay no attention to that little voice in your head. Somebody has to win at prizejar.com. Will it be you? UK over 18s only. Free postal entry is available.
The Leaders Phone In. Call now on 0333 2020 401.
Clyde 2.
John Collins with political correspondent Alan Smith got it right eventually. Yay! And Douglas Ross, I'm glad your job and name is so much easier to do. Leader of the Scottish Conservative Party joining us as well. Taking your calls and answering your questions.
Douglas, this week you made the offer to both Anna Sawar and Willie Rennie to essentially have discussions about how you can stop, there being an independence majority in the Scottish Parliament. The polls, again, this morning, the Sunday Times poll suggests that there's the Nationalists are on course to win a supermajority. Does that offer to Willie Rennie and Anna Sawar still stand?
Yes, absolutely. I think all of us who believe in Scotland's place in the United Kingdom have to work together. We've seen that's what the Nationalists are trying to do. They're trying to game the system. It's not why proportional representation was set up in this way. It was to give a proportional make-up of the Scottish Parliament based on the party's support. So it was never supposed to be intended that one party do very well in the constituency and another similar party then mop up in the regional list vote. But that's what's happening at the moment in terms of the opinion polls. And again, I know other listeners didn't like me saying it, but that is the threat that's facing us at the moment, that the Nationalists, be they Nicola Sturgeon's or Alex Salmond's, will game this system to focus on another referendum. And that's why I believe all the parties who do support Scotland staying in the United Kingdom have to recognise that threat and work together to avoid it.
Anna Sawar has told you to grow up, and Willie Rennie says you're part of the problem. So it doesn't sound like there's any hope there for you that they're going to work with you.
Well, even with that response, I'll continue to hold out the olive branch. I'll continue to say this is the real threat. We all want Scottish Labour, Scottish Liberal Democrats, Scottish Conservatives to focus on the recovery, but it's only the Scottish Conservatives that are saying we can't have that recovery when we've got the threat of another independence referendum hanging over us and dominating what happens in Holyrood and in Scottish politics. Let's get rid of that threat, and then we can focus on our recovery, and we can all bring forward our ideas as Scottish Conservatives have to invest in the NHS, to increase educational standards, to protect people's jobs. That's the discussion we can have once we stop the SNP and their efforts to get a majority in May.
How do you see that working though during the campaign, now that all candidates have been confirmed across Scotland? There was that offer there before about potentially standing some candidates down in some areas. I mean, how do you see that cooperation working during an election campaign?
Well, that's why I made the offer before the nominations closed earlier on this week. That's now not an opportunity to look at what we could do in individual seats. And given that Scottish Labour and Scottish Liberal Democrats have turned down my offer and aren't sounding very amenable to take the offer up going forward in this campaign, people then have to look at the strongest party to stop an SNP majority. And in 2016, that was the Scottish Conservatives. And now, 5 years on, it's the Scottish Conservatives. We're the party with the strength right up and down the country to challenge the SNP, with the track record of challenging the SNP. And people know that is a tried and tested method that stopped an SNP majority 5 years ago. It can do it again now.
You wrote to both of them last week, but both of them have said you've never picked up the phone to them during this entire time. Annis says in his entire time as Scottish Labour leader, you've never picked up the phone to him. Why haven't you just picked up the phone and given them a call?
Well, I think the way we do this at the moment is, setting out our plans, and that's what I did with the letters I sent to them both. It was a detailed letter asking them to sign up to a unionist pledge. They refused to do that. We've clearly spoken at events. We were all at the BBC debate earlier on this week, but it seems from their reaction, from Scottish Labour's reaction and Scottish Liberal Democrats' reaction, that they will not work with Scottish Conservatives to stop the SNP. So people have to realise there is a way to stop the SNP. We did it before, we can do it again, and that's why the party list vote is so important, because it was on that list vote that Scottish Conservatives picked up enough seats to deny the SNP a majority back in 2016, and that's why it's so crucial people give their second party list vote to the Scottish Conservatives at this election.
You say all that positive stuff, but reading the polls in the Times this morning, it looks like the supermajority is certainly at this point in the campaign on, despite the fact that the Scottish Conservatives have been so strong about all the things you've just said. If the supermajority happens, does that mean that Douglas Ross, having lost seats and allowed the supermajority to occur, considers his position?
Well, I'm not going to consider my position based on an opinion poll 5 weeks out from the election. I don't limit my ambitions for the Scottish Conservatives. We had an outstanding result in 2016, and it was that result that stopped the SNP and stopped an SNP majority. A similar result this time can allow us to focus on our recovery, focus on that £500 skills grant I was speaking about for every person in the country, recruiting 3,000 additional teachers, investing £2 billion additional funding into the NHS, rolling out full fibre broadband by 2027. These are all the things I'm excited about and I want to speak about and want to enact after the election, but we can't do that if the SNP get their majority and take us back to this discussion of the past for another referendum.
Still a couple of minutes for you to make your point. 0333 2020 401 on the phone. On the text 61054, start your message show. Mark called this morning. Happy Easter to you, Mark.
Hi there, how you doing?
Good, thank you. What's your point?
I'd like to ask Douglas the following question. There's 3 parties in Scotland registered not in Scotland. The Lib Dems, the Tories and the Labour Party are all registered in England. Now, how would it be for me as a Scottish voter to vote with my best, for the party with the best intentions for Scotland? The only party registered in Scotland is the Scottish National Party. Surely, by voting for the Scottish National Party, I'm voting for a party that puts my country first and is not, at the whims of another nation.
No, Mark, if you vote SNP, you're voting to endorse their 14 years of failure that we've seen from them since they came to power in 2007. What the Scottish Conservatives are offering at this election, as I say, is an ambitious, positive series of policies that can really improve things, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's our economy, whether it's protecting jobs. These are all the things you can achieve by voting Scottish Conservative. Voting SNP seeks to achieve one thing, to separate Scotland from the rest of the UK. Now, you might be in favour of that, but a lot of people are really concerned right now, when we're in the middle of this pandemic, when we're not through the health crisis and we've still got the economic fallout to come, that we shouldn't be having another referendum when we've got a recovery to focus on.
Wasted vote, though. I mean, you're only on target at the moment by looking at the polls to get anything between 20, 24 seats if you're lucky. It's a wasted vote, and you don't have Scotland's wishes at heart. You're kowtowing to another country.
I really take... Sorry, Mark.
In effect, a foreign government.
I really take exception at that I'm proud to be Scot and British. I'm Scottish born and bred, and for some people, if you don't support independence, if you don't support the SNP, somehow you're not Scottish. I think that's absolute rubbish. I'm as proud a Scot, as proud a Brit. I think we can achieve a lot together as a family of 4 nations, as a United Kingdom, and Scotland can do an awful lot better than it's done over the last 14 years with the SNP failing in so many areas because their focus has been on their party political priority rather than the national priority.
We've had a lot of questions in regards to trust. I mean, that's one of the big issues leading up to this Holyrood campaign, is about trust in politicians, trust in what you say and what you're offering. And there's, a lot of feeling that trust in politics has been damaged recently. I mean, how would you go about trying to restore trust in politicians, trust in MSPs elected to Holyrood?
Well, first of all, it's setting out a positive manifesto that's backed by our plans to how to deliver it, and it's fully costed. That's what we need to do to ensure people can have trust in terms of what we're saying we will do in a number of different areas could actually be delivered. In terms of trust in politics in general, I agree it's taken a real battering in recent years and indeed in recent months, and Scottish Conservatives have also brought forward proposals as to how we can rebuild trust in the Scottish Parliament, because that has been damaged over a number of different inquiries. We've got the case where an MSP, I don't want to go into too much detail, but a former government minister could be forced to resign from his role within government but continue to take an MSP salary and continue to be an MSP in all but name, yet never attend Parliament and never work for his constituents. So Scottish Conservatives have put forward proposals for something called a Mackay's Law, which will allow the public to recall MSPs who do not meet their high aspirations for what those in elected public office should achieve.
Sudden change of subject. Text in from Robert. What's your position on weapons of mass destruction being cited in Scotland, and why?
So I think I'll be the only party leader who will speak in this phone-in to say that we need these weapons for our national security and our international security, and they also protect a number of important jobs in Scotland and particularly around the Helensburgh area. So I believe as the threats continue to change across the globe, we have to respond to that, and Scotland benefits by helping the UK to protect ourselves and our partners around the globe, and Scotland benefits from the jobs associated with that as well.
Interesting point from Dom on the text. Watch the TV debate. He's listened to this this morning. He says that you spent the hour slating the SNP. Your leaflets do the same. As a young person, he sees independence in his future. How can you turn that argument around?
Well, Dom, I've tried in all my answers to speak about our positive vision for Scotland. A lot of the questions have taken it back to independence. If we stop speaking about independence, I'll be quite happy about that. If we get rid of that as the overarching theme of this election, that would be great. And that means I can spend even more time than I have. Just look at what I've been doing over the last 3 days at Stobhill Hospital, speaking about our investment in the NHS, at Thales in Glasgow, speaking about apprenticeships and expanding that across the country, and just yesterday in Murray, speaking about securing that vital funding for local councils up and down the country, which protects local services that Dom and everyone relies on day in, day out. So that's the positive agenda I'm taking in this election. But if the questions keep asking me about independence and the threat of another independence referendum, I've got to answer them or I'll get criticised for that as well.
Another question just reaching us just now, Douglas, is saying, also talking of playing the system, why does Mr Ross not want to be held to account by voters in his own constituency instead of opting for the back door entry via the list system?
Well, the people of Murray elected me in 2017 and re-elected me in 2019, so I know what it's like to be elected and held to account for what you are saying. But when I became leader of the Scottish Conservatives in August, we had already selected our outstanding local candidate, Tim Eagle, leader of the Conservative group on Murray Council, to be our candidate in Murray, and it's right that Tim gets to fight that seat. I think he's doing exceptionally well. I got that from the people I met yesterday when I was out delivering with Tim, and that's why I'm seeking election on the Scottish Parliament list system for the Highlands and Islands, so I can also represent people across this vast area, about 44% of the landmass of Scotland, from Shetland to Argyll, from the Western Isles across to Murray, and my Murray seat is actually in the Highlands and Islands region as well, or certainly 7/8 of it is.
You'd be pleased to know that we're almost at the end of this hour, Douglas. What have you enjoyed more, doing this or doing your Facebook Lives that you often do?
Well, I haven't had any difficult names to read out, which sometimes catches me out on Facebook Live, and this is a lot more professional. You know, I've been really impressed by the microphone, the computers, all the buttons in front of me. With Facebook Live, it's me, an iPad, and a shiny light to try and brighten up our dining rooms. So this is certainly more professional.
We are now just heading into the second full week of this campaign. What can we expect to see from you and from the Scottish Tories? How do you aim to essentially turn around this campaign?
Well, you'll continue to hear me having a positive vision for Scotland. I'll be getting out and about with our candidates across the country. We're going to be focusing on the environment, on renewables, on the economy, on protecting people's jobs, on supporting our NHS, looking at how we can come out of these restrictions that we're currently in as safe a way as possible. So there's lots of positive comments and actions coming from the Scottish Conservatives up and down the country over the next week, and that's what you'll see until May the 6th. I want this to be a positive campaign about what we can do focused on our recovery, and that's what you get from me as leader of the Scottish Conservatives.
You mentioned the restrictions. Obviously, there's some easing tomorrow. Garden centres reopen, hairdressers reopen. The most important question, are you booked in?
I'm not booked in, but a hairdresser is more important for me than it is for you, Alan. So, you know, on the radio every day, you don't have to worry what it looks like. I am petrified that my hair's out of place and such like, so it's definitely needing cut, and I'm hoping to get booked in as quickly as possible.
Great faces for radio all around. Douglas, thank you so much for taking part this morning and being a good sport with our callers as well.
Thank you, I've enjoyed it.
Cheers. And thank you also to Alan. We're back next Sunday. Nicola, next weekend?
Nicola Sturgeon will be taking your call.